Hi, we're going to be reading Joint. It's 44 pages. It's Joint Mission Essential Task List Development Handbook, September 2002, or JMETL. Introduction. Step 1, review mission analysis, identify joint mission essential tasks. Step 2, describe conditions of each joint mission essential task. Establish mission-based standards, joint mission essential task list development example, summary, glossary of terms. List of figures, joint mission essential task list development process. Step one, UGLT, the organization GMT development process. Step two, joint mission essential task list. Step three, joint training system. Joint military joint mission essential task list definition process. Mission analysis support, JETMAT development, examples of operation template for a humanitarian assistance mission, relationships with level of war, operating environment. Also, list of figures, organization of conditions of joint tasks, and examples of operation template for the mission to liberate Kuwait, destroy Iraq forces. List tables, notional task mission matrix, page 14. All right, introduction. This handbook is designated to help combatant commanders support subordinate joint force commanders, functional service component commanders implement the joint mission essential task list. Um, Process described in the Joint Chief of Staff Index 3501 Joint Training Policy for the Armed Forces of the United States. The comment to the side is Joint Training Forces focuses on tasks performed one service by more than one service under the direction of a joint force commander in accordance with the joint doctrine. All right. Definition of joint training. Joint training is military based on the joint doctrine designed to prepare joint forces and joint staffs to respond to operational requirements identified by the joint force commanders. Joint training generally involves the performance of the task members of elements with more than one military service under the direction of a joint force commander. The responsibility of joint training resides from the chairman, Joint Chief of Staff, or CJCS, Chairman, Joint Chief of Staff, um, combatant commanders, and subordinate joint force commanders. All right. Importance of joint training. Joint training is a fundamental effective employment of military forces over a broad range of missions. Importance of joint training. Over the past several years, the U.S. military service has significantly downsized, moved the forward base back to the continental United States, or CONUS. During the same period, the range of missions the U.S. military forces must prepare has greatly expanded. The combination of factors greatly increased the requirements of employment of the joint force of the joints will be centrally and successfully execution with the future missions required by the U.S. Armed Forces. Joint doctrine will assume the ensuring importance for the conduct of the assigned mission. Consequently, it to our armed forces are going to fight in jointly. They must train to jointly. All right. Resources for conducting joint training are constrained, and other activities compete for the command of attention. Constraints of joint training. U.S. military forces operate with the competing demands for equal example of the prior conducting joint training service component commanders must be spend significant amount of time conducting service training. Also, joint force commanders, in addition with their joint training, a responsibility may be involved with the current military operations, including meeting presence, access requirements. Moreover, the joint resources are constrained. As a result, the joint commanders cannot train to every task for every possible mission, but there must therefore be selective establishing joint training requirements. All right, joint mission essential task. Describe a joint force commander's priority warfighting requirement. The joint mission essential task to accommodate with the constraints with the joint resources. Joint forces commanders must identify the task and most essential. They are assigned to anticipated or assigned in anticipated missions with prior already given to them in the wartime mission. The essential tasks are referred to as joint mission essential task. All right. The joint mission essential task list describes the essential tasks for the joint force commander, including the associated conditions and measurable standards. The Joint Mission Essential Task List is a Joint Force Commander list of the priority joint tasks derived from the plan's orders along with the associated conditions, measured standards constitutes the Joint Force Commander's warfighting requirements and is called by the Joint Mission Essential Task List. The Joint Mission Essential Task List represents the commander's priority and joint warfighting requirements based on the assigned mission. Joint Mission Essential Tasks are identified by reviewing plans of the OPORDs, or Operation Orders, I believe, for executing the mission. Plans with Operation Orders describe Joint Mission Essential Tasks. Joint Force Commanders develop the Joint Mission Essential Tasks based on the review of the task to be performed and implemented on operation plans, executing mission orders, inputs of the process, the assigned mission and plans execution order, the joint doctrine guiding the employment of the forces, the common task language for the reporting of joint mission and essential task. The process is illustrated in Figure 1. Figure 1 shows a assigned mission going into 3 mission analysis as plan, order, joint direction, and plans, orders, joint doctrine, universal joint task list for the mission analysis. Your assigned mission goes into plan, orders, joint doctrine, universal task list, and then into step 1, identifying the joint mission essential task. Joint mission essential tasks are identified by using the universal joint task list as a common task language. The Universal Joint Task List is a common task language. The Joint Staff developed and improved the Universal Joint Task List for using Joint Force Commanders establishing the Joint Mission Essential Task List. The Universal Joint Task List of the Commander Joint Chief and Staff Manual 3500-04 provides the ordering listing of the tasks described by the Armed Forces' ability to perform activities. Process the Joint Force Commanders required to execute the assigned missions since the Universal Joint Task List is found on the Joint Doctrine, the Joint Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. It provides a common language to describe the warfighting requirements of the Joint Force Commanders. The Universal Joint Task List can be used by combatant commanders, subordinate Joint Force Commanders, and functional and service component commanders. Alright, let me see how big I can get this. Alright, at the top you see your accomplishments, objectives of the national military strategy. Going into strategical national, you have conduct from the left to right. There's 7 strategical nationals. Conduct, strategy, deployment, redeployment. Development, strategic intelligence. Employ forces. Provide sustainment. Provide strategical direction and integration. Conduct mobilization and conduct the force development. In strategic theater, you have the accomplishment objectives of theater campaign strategies, such as conducting inter-theater strategical development concentration maneuvers of forces, development of theater strategic intelligence, employ theater strategic firepower, sustain theater forces, provide theater strategic command and control, provide theater protection, establish theater forces requirements and readiness, develop, maintain alliance and regional relations. Okay, accomplishment, objective, subordinate campaigns, and major operations. This is operational. You have 6 operational sets. Conducting operational movement and maneuver, developing operational intelligence, employing operational firepower, providing operational support, exercising operational command and control, and providing operational protection. Tactical, there is 6 tactical organizations. Accomplish objectives of battle engagement, conduct maneuver, develop intelligence, employ firepower, perform combat services, supports and exercising command and control, provide mobility and survivability. Alright, hi. That was Figure 2, your Universal Joint Task List organization. Alright, your Universal Joint Task List is organized by levels of war and composed by major joint tactics, sub-tactics performed on each level of war. Organization of Universal Joint Task List. The tasks contained within the Universal Joint Task List are organized by the levels of war. Strategic, operational, and tactical are shown in Figure 2. The strategic level is further divided into 2 parts, national and theater. Each of these 3 level wars are described in tasks organized in major joint tasks performed at a level of war. For example, the operational level of war must often the focal point of the Joint Task Force, or JTF commander, is organized around the following: uh, operational or the operational Universal Joint Task List, conducting operational movement and maneuver, developing operational intelligence, employing operational firepower, providing operational support, exercising operational command and control, providing operational protection. Each of these major tasks is further defined in the hierarchy subordinate tasks. Each of the tasks is in the Universal Joint Task List and is assigned a reference number consisting of a code referring to the level of war task. SN is strategic national, ST is strategic theater, OP is operational tactical. Numbers of referring to the major joint task, operational 1 conducting of operational movement and maneuver, and subtask are given the operational 1-1 for conducting conditional movement or conducting operational movement, and Operation 111 would be formulating the request of strategic deployment of theater authorization, or JOA, joint analysis. So the numbers referring are in a numerical outline. The Universal Joint Task List identifies what joint tasks are performed. Universal Joint Task is a tool to identifying what joint tasks can be accomplished. The tasks identified and defined in the Universal Joint Task List provided with the menu of commanders of what task is being performed without specifying how and will be performed, who and will perform them. Operational 3221 employing PSYOPs in theater operation and joint of analysis. Joint doctrine describes how the joint tasks are performed. Joint doctrine task how the joints are performed. The joint doctrine and the JTTP, or joint the joint doctrine and the JTTP provide authorization guidance for how joint tasks are performed. For example, Joint Pub 353 Doctrine of Joint Psychological Operations describes how the Op 3221 employing PSYOPs in theater operation of the joint analysis. Employing the service-specific means and describing the service doctrine. Plans of operational orders specifying who and when the joint tasks are performed. Plans of operational orders specify who and what tasks are performed. The Joint Force Commander often will have choice regarding the service of functional component of the perform the joint tasks. These decisions are made during the planning process of developing concept of the operation, joint military mission, operational lands, con plans, functional plans, and operational orders, assigning joint task execution for elements of joint forces. The task alone do not state the mission requirement. Information on the condition of the operational environment must be also included. Mission requirements must include conditions of information. To more fully describe the mission requirements, the Joint Force Commander should not only identify the joint task, but also describe the conditions of operational environment associated with these tasks. And see in Figure 3, the conditions of those variables for operating environment, they may be affecting the system, including performance. A complete list of conditions include the Joint Chief of Staff Manual 3500-04. Example of conditions have the effective performance of the task. Operational 112, conducting intra-theater deployment, redeployment of forces in theater operation, joint of analysis, and a new near-term weather system. The security is intra-theater locks and degrees of host nation support. Figure 3 is a joint mission essential task list development process. As before, you've seen the assigned mission with the plans, order, and joint doctrine, universal joint task list, and the mission analysis. Step 1 was to identify the joint mission essential task, and step 2 is describing the conditions. Moving on, the joint mission essential task list process is completed when the standards are assigned to task. Joint Force Commanders establish standards. The final setup of the developing joint mission requirements involves the selecting performance measure of the joint task, establishing standards consistent with the commander's intent, concepting operational for the mission, and the joint standards and a minimum acceptable proficiency required in task performance. Figure 4 shows a joint mission essential task list development process. Step 3. Assigned mission with a plan to order, joint doctrine, and a universal joint task list. In the 3 next steps, defining joint mission essential tasks, describing the conditions, and establishing the standards. The Joint Mission Essential Task List forms the requirements basis of the joint training. The process of developing the Joint Mission Essential Task List is described in detail in the next 4 sections of the handbook. The Joint Mission Essential Task List provides with the principal input to the joint training system. The Joint Forces Command of the Joint Mission Essential Task List provides a major input, planning, execution, and assigning joint training is illustrated in Figure 5. As described above, in Joint Mission Essential Task List development process consisting of 3 steps. These steps are discussed in detail following these directions, followed by a section of containing and completing the Joint Mission Essential Task List development example. All right, your sets from the mission. You have your Joint Mission Essential Task List, whether they be MRL, LRC, HA, or PO, NEOs, or whatever. You have your mission going inside on the outside of the circle of developing a training plan, applying the commander's intent, setting the training objectives, deciding the exercising program, defining optimal training means and match forces. Development training scenario that incorporates a joint mission intentional task list, replicate the mission conditions applicable the combat standards, conduct the joint training, commander evaluates the training, commander assesses the training situation and goes back to the missions block, which goes into the assigned mission plan orders, the universal joint task list. Step 1, identifying joint mission essential task, describing conditions, and establishing the standards. Step 1, reviewing mission and analysis, identifying joint mission essential task. Purpose. In this step, the commanders examine the mission applying with the universal joint task list, determining their mission essential task. This begins with the process systematically determining the mission based on warfighting requirements. Joint Force Commandments initiative with the Joint Mission Essential Task List, developing and reviewing their assigned missions. Review to assigned missions. Joint Forces commanders may have number assigned of the ranging from large-scale combat operation, military operations other than war, or MOTEL. The mission originated with the Joint Strategic Capabilities Plan, JSCP, and the NCA taskings, treating obligations to accordance with the principles procedures found in the Unified Command Plan, and the Unified Action Armed Forces. For each mission, one of the more joint force commands will be in the supported role, while others will be in the supported role, while others will be in a supporting role. All right, joint warfighting requirements are product of the cumulative planning efforts of the combat and commander and subordinate elements. Review of the commander estimates the planning for the joint operation joint force commanders accomplished through the estimated process. Describes the concept operation resulting in task assignment to the joint force elements. This prescribes the establishing responsibility for every element of the joint multinational force and provides the foundation for the joint training system. Developing the joint training requirements. This is product of the cumulative joint planning efforts by the combatant commander and the subordinate elements. As a result, the job warfighting requirements reflecting on the sum of the total across the levels of the command, the warfighting capabilities required to execute combat commanders assigned in the mission. This is illustrated in Figure 6. Alright, Figure 6 shows your joints. We gotta look back up here. Your joint strategical capability plan. Joint strategical capability plan. Joint strategical capability and plans, operational plans, what to the mission essential and how the joint doctrine, JTTP, and the joint strategical control plan, plans meet them what the mission analysis, and then it goes into the integration. 2 major green blocks, restated mission, commander's intent, concept, operations, what task under what conditions performed to what standards, the joint mission essential task list, going from what task and conditions performed to what universal joint task list version, and back to joint back and forth. Plans provide an excellent starting point for the development of Joint Mission Essential Task List. Review of the concept of operation. The concept of operation provides information on the task sequence, task interrelationship. Figure 7 illustrates the methodology describing a multi-econ concept operation task assigned subordinate commands. Considering the prospectively Joint Force Commander, Joint Force Task Commander, the Joint Task Force commander assigned with the mission by a combatant commander to eject Iraqi armed forces from Kuwait. The CJFT, the um, Joint Task CGFT staff must go through a planning process determining how the mission will accomplish the product of the mission and analysis of the plan that details tasks assigned with the subordinate commands, coordinating the supports with CINC. The analysis identifies the tasks performed by the CJFT and the staff for the assigned subordinate commands gain and maintain air superiority. Mission analysis must be conducted to determine how they accomplish their assigned task. Alright, I got back out of this one a little bit. Alright, we're gonna read the joint planning on the execution side is the bubble side with the top of the with different on the top of the joint training requirements or joint mission essential task. Mission A, B, and C have a combatant commanders and combatant ops options. Eject Iraq armed forces from Kuwait goes through Universal Joint Test Strategic and was given the joint training requirements as coordinating information sharing, arrange conditions, standards, acquiring train supply, transportation, personal condition standards, foster alliance for regional relations, security arrangements, conditional standards, determine theater's force size, structure requirements, condition standards, monitoring work worldwide theater and strategic situation condition standards. All right, you also have your joint force commander from the combat commander goes into joint force commander A. While joint force commander and B and C are the commanders are also in mission A and B and C, but separate combat and commander concept options. The joint from force commander A has these universal joint tasks listed in the concept of operation for the Army, the MAR force, the Navy force, and the SOC. The joint statistic list for the joint fleet commander joint training requirements are establishing intelligence requirements, condition standards, developing theater strategy, condition standards, providing theater or aerospace missile defense conditions, coordinate training in units and personnel condition standards, provide operational support, condition standards, provide positive identification, friendly operational force standards. The JFAC or the AFFO are concept operations. The concept operation options are conduct offensive tactical counter air. From the AFFOR, JFFAC, there's an F111, 16, 117, and 18. The collect information, operational targets, condition. These standards counter enemy attacks, theater operational options, joint JOA, joint of analysis conditions, select target attack condition standards, integrate tactical fires and condition standards, acquiring communication information, maintains to its condition status, and your F-15 wing concept options are occupy combat area condition standards, conduct lethal engagement conduction standards, synchronized tactical operation condition standards, and that is the Figure 7 mission analysis supporting the joint mission essential task development. OPLANs and operational orders contain specified implied tasks which can be cross-referenced in the Universal Joint Task. Cross-reference of OPLAN and operational orders of the Joint Universal Task. Once the concept of the operation is determined, detailed the planning is carried out and specifically task performed, assigning the tasks of the force elements, sequencing the task, documented the phases of the operational plan. The user joint task list provides a comprehensive menu of the tasks of the joint force commanders at their disposal to accomplish their assigned mission at the level of detail of the task contained with the operational land can be used to cross-reference the universal joint task list. Warfighting requirements will be based on the type of the military operation force involved with the combat environment or other factors. Differing operations requiring different joint task analysis. Each mission requires somewhat different capabilities due to the variations in the type of the operation forces involved, combat environment, commands, intent, concept of the operations. Although many tasks require execute Separate missions may be the same task as they required one type of the operation may not be required in others. Indirect enemy operational forces and targets is required a major regional contingency, not required in humanitarian assistance operation. The purpose of this step is to examine the task required to accomplish each of the combatant's command assigned mission. Since deliberate plans are rarely executed, planned commanders can maintain flexibility by writing the joint mission essential task somewhat generically. Joint mission essential task may apply multiple missions or theaters. Since deliberate plans are rarely executed with the plan's commanders maintain flexibility with writing joint mission essential task somewhat generically. This allows the signal task to apply for the wide range of theaters and types of missions. Provide health services for theater of operations may be performed with humanitarian assistance operations as well as major regional contingency. Therefore, joint mission essential tasks should not be specifically particular means, tactics, areas, or enemies. Such specific information can be included in the statement of the requirements condition information. Joint force commanders must determine the joint task essential for the achieving the mission success. The task form is commanded in Joint Mission Essential Task List. The construction and command of the Joint Mission Essential Task List is examining the plan of the assigned mission. A joint force commander should assess the contribution of each of the tasks of the mission's success, including most of the mission essential task on the command mission essential task list. And it's essential for the commanders to have multiple missions. Some missions may be more important than others. As a result, the tasks associated with the higher priority missions receive greater consideration, taking associated with the lower priority missions. In addition, the tasks contributing more than one mission may receive increase in considerability of the joint mission essential task. The product of this step is command of the Joint Mission Essential Task List. To include the auditing, tracking, linking tasks to the assigned mission, subordinate commands follow the same process, identifying their mission essential. While the number of the Joint Mission Essential tasks associated with the entire plan may be quite large and illustrated in Figure 7, the number of the tasks comprising the Joint Mission Essential tasks for any single command may consist of only a smaller number of tasks. Alright, USACOM in its role of providing forces with the supporting the other joint force commands provided by the Joint Force IITL composed of the Common Operational Joint Task List. Identifying common operational joint tasks. USACOM Combat and Command must develop a Joint Mission Essential Task List in addition with the USACOM to prepare forces to provide to the support of geographical combat, and commanders must develop an operational joint task list based on the mission of these supported joint force commanders. This task list, called the Joint Force Integrity Task List, or GTFIL, Joint Force Integrator Task List, reflects joint task conditions, standards, and required by multiple standard combatant commanders. Joint Force Commanders should produce their own Joint Mission Essential Tasks should they review the approved subordinate commander. The review of the Joint Mission Essential Task of subordinate commands and staff elements. When new tasks are provided with under the immediate direction of the commander, they should be considered with the potential of the Joint Mission Essential Task for the commander. However, for those tasks that are performed with the supporting or subordinate commands, the resulting of Joint Mission Essential tasks must be those of supporting subordinate command. For the example, the conducting of mission essential that combatant commanders successfully deploy to the theater of the combatant commander's Joint Mission Essential task of deployment involved with the deployment of the TPFDD, determining forces of the cargo to be deployed, redeployed, and the task of the strategical nation conduct deployment, redeployment may be Joint Mission Essential for supporting the command. In addition, with the supporting commands may include tasks of the Joint Mission Essential tasks, such as the operational plan, expanding in the theaters of the capacity of the PODs, allocating special in theater of the operation of the Joint of Analysis, Joint of Action, JOA. Each Joint Force Commander should review the appropriate Joint Mission Essential task for the subordinate commanders. Commanders have flexibility in how they construct their command. The Joint Mission Essential Task List, reporting the Joint Mission Essential Task List, the construction of Joint Mission Essential Task List, force commanders' subordinate elements are not limited to citing the highest level of task in the Universal Joint Task List structure. They can also cite 2 or 3 digital tasks as a result. As a rule, commanders should cite their task primarily at the level of detail that most efficiently describes the warfighting requirements. Commander can develop a mission by task matrix using the universal joint task list. Highlight tasks common in multiple missions, and matrix can be aided with the commander in developing training plans. Developing a mission task matrix is an internal management task. The commander can develop a mission by task matrix to help document the mission basis of the command of the joint mission essential task list. A notional universal joint task list times the mission matrix. The matrix could include both the missions directly tasked and supporting mission. The matrix displays the task occurs in multiple missions. Some tasks will allow play for the role of joint force commander missions or assessing operational situation, where the other task is to protect these electromagnetic spectrum theater operations and may only be required to selected missions. The matrices are useful to joint force commanders when they develop a training exercising plan for their forces to ensure the commanders include training plans that have basis in command missions. Table 1 shows the Table 1 is a notional task and times the mission matrix. You have the MRC, the MRC, SPD, SPT, NG, LRC, PLA, HAV, and NEO. MRC is a major regional contingency. LRC is the lesser regional contingency. PO is the peace operations. HA is humanitarian assistance, and E is non-combatant evacuation operations. You have a strategic development, maintaining alliance regional relations. A strategic theater, providing strategic direction of theater forces. Operational plan, analysis, evaluation, operational areas, establish properties and supply operational forces, coordinate with political military support, provide security for the operational forms and means. Several techniques can be used by the aid of the Joint Mission Essential Task List. Techniques aiding the Joint Mission Essential Task List develop. Several techniques are available to aid the process of analyzing mission in order to identify the Joint Mission Essential Task List. Our technique involves the construction of operation templates. Operational templates geographical depict the concept of the operational sequence of the joint task. Operational templates depict the sequence of joint tasks in accordance with the concept of operational. The operation templates are provided with a graphic depiction of the task activates the interrelationship involved with the conduct of the military operation activities represented in operation templates and vary for the broad task operational planning, exercise operational command and control for the specified the task, the operational planning, the communicating operational information. Some of the military activities may occur on occurrence over the finite time period, and as an example, the deployment of the forces, theater operation, other tasks may occur periodically, like reviewing, updating a plan. Yet other tasks may be continuously, like managing a communications network. Some tasks, like developing a plan, may occur at a single location. One other task, like distributing supplies, may be formed in multiple locations. Thus, the joint task can be represented and distinguished within the framework. Operational template may display the variety of relationship among the joint tasks. The operational templates also depict the interactions among the tasks. Operational templates represent the interaction interdependency among the tasks and influence that combine with the effect of the mission success. For example, the refueling rate of the effective ability of the force to maneuver. Operational template includes a task selected with the commanders of the mission essential as well as the other tasks. Operational templates depict the joint mission essential tasks and other tasks required for the conducting operation. A simplified operation template shown in Figure 8 with the humanitarian assistance mission. Several tasks identified must be performed to execute the commander's concept operation. The commander determines which of these tasks are absolutely essential, indicating the shading. The successful execution of the operation identifies the joint mission and essential task. Other tasks may include the template as well. Alright, you've seen the shading ones. Those ones indicate the absolute essential joint mission essential task list. While the mission objectives from the campaign plan and the state and the established distribution system maintaining security and transition in relief and efforts of other. Your Joint Fisher Commander of the Humanitarian Assistance comes with the concept of operation, assisting local authorities in providing security, assisting combat and disease, and providing relief supplies to the campaign over the whole mark of the operational template. Um, from operational, you have on 2 circuits from operational analysis, and not to include and then later they'll include the third one. Analysis evaluated operational areas. On the left-hand top circuit, you have direct lead subordinate operational forces, which goes to the conductor intra-theater redeployment of forces. Also, from analyzing evaluating operational areas, you have the communicating operational information going to the conductor theater redeployment forces, which is a joint mission essential task. From analyzing and evaluating operation, conduct an intra-theater deployment of service forces, which is a joint mission essential task. While they have not so absolute establishing priorities and supplying operational forces for 2 different scenarios of providing field and services, providing movement and services at the theater of operational and joint of JOAs. The establishing priority of supply operational forces has a absolute provide security operational forces and means going into coordinating political and military support through the conducting intra-theater redeployment and forces. To best reflect the commander's concept of any operation, the joint mission essential task, along with other tasks, may be included in any operational template. Type of the task that can be included with the operational template is a major task, including the operational template will focus those force under the direct control of the joint force commander. Some of these tasks will be selected as the commander joint mission essential. Operational STEM templates contain the task performed with the higher headquarters subordinate organization. Tasks performed with the higher headquarters subordinate organizations. In addition, the tasks may include the operational template that are performed by the higher headquarters of the subordinate organization. For example, the strategic network, strategic national coordination information sharing arrangements may be performed by organizational above the joint force commander, although the task of the task TA perform health services may be performed in a subordinate organization. Operation templates depict the interface between supported and supporting commands. Tasks performed supporting the supported organization. Tasks performed supporting commands or USS PACECOM. Of the strategical nation collecting information and strategic targets, directly supporting the command of the joint mission essential task, including operation template and performing with the tasks that the strategic command may be required to perform certain tasks, as well as strategical nation collecting information and strategic targets supported by the command may have to perform the strategic theater, identifying priorities, validate intelligent requirements. Each type represent the interface between the supported supporting commands and are referred to as command link task. All right, joint force commandments, beginning with the joint mission essential task list development process, selecting joint task, the joint mission essential task. Based on the review of the priority mission, joint force commanders will select the joint tasks of the most essential to the mission essential. The mission success of the joint mission essential task list. They must be selected because of the resource of the inadequate trained force of all the mission tasks. To assist the commander with the Universal Joint Task Count and the Commander Joint Chief of Staff Manual 3504. The result is the step production joint mission essential task by joint force commanders linked to his assigned mission. Step 2, describing conditions each met from the joint mission essential task.